Welcome to Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, President of Performance Strategies and Diane Bogino Development. Every time you see the news, doesn't it seem like there is another story about a company, some executives or a famous person with allegations of wrongdoing? Do you ever wonder how they could be so stupid? What were they thinking? Our guest today was forced to answer those questions himself when his legal troubles became national news. He is a former financial executive with FDIC Division of Liquidation Standard Chartered Bank and Dr. Pepper Company, a former CPA with a Big Four firm, and a 30-year veteran in the real estate business. However, his career hit a wall in 2007 when the real estate company he worked for fell under criminal scrutiny. If you ever wondered how simple, ethical decisions could go so terribly wrong, the lessons from our guest story are for you. Let me introduce you to Kevin Foster. Kevin, welcome to the show and thank you for being on Business Notes.
Well, thank you, Diane. It's really nice to be here with you.
Yes.
So this should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to our little talk.
You're very upfront about the fact that you spent 37 months in a federal prison because of a white-collar conviction. So tell our viewers about the circumstances around that conviction, and was there anything that you could have done to have prevented that?
Sure. I was actually Executive Vice President of Finance for a real estate development company, and I was based in Atlanta, but the company was in North Carolina where we had a project. And that project failed, and when the project failed, the investors in that project complained to North Carolina Attorney General's office that there was fraud involved in that project, which, you know, I'm not really sure. I wasn't there, but there was enough to the allegation for the Attorney General to investigate, and then the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office got involved as well, unfortunately. And they sued the company. The Attorney General sued the company, and then there was a criminal investigation, and very much unfortunately, they started looking at some of the details of the loan closings, the investor loans closings in there, and they came up with a theory of bank fraud, and they pursued all the officers of the company under a conspiracy theory, which means that almost anything can get you convicted of fraud under a conspiracy, an email, a text, a meeting that you attended, almost anything to prove that you advanced the loan fraud along in some way. And I mean, I was involved in a lot of details of that project, but none with the investors. But it was enough there that they threatened to put me away for 20 to 30 years if I decided to go to trial. So it was really a disaster type situation. So I had no choice but to plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. On top of that, my attorney wanted another $1 million in legal fees. I already paid him $250,000, and he thought I was going to lose because the feds, when they want to go after you, they will go after you, and they will not stop. And so that's what happened. So I ended up reporting to prison about 18 months after I pled guilty. You believe that it took that long for me to actually report to prison. And about 2 weeks into prison, I was picked up in prison for protective custody and put into solitary confinement. And it was in the solitude of that cell that I decided that no one else should have this experience. And I vowed at that point in time that I was going to do all I could in order to help others avoid the fate that I was facing at that point.
Good grief. Huh, what a mess. So
yes, it was.
Yes. What did you learn during your prison journey?
Well, the prison journey itself was very, very interesting because obviously you're thrown in with a lot of people who have, there was a lot of white collar people there. So a lot of people that had very similar backgrounds, but there was also a lot of other people there that have very dissimilar backgrounds, the drug dealers and so on and so forth. I started off in a low security prison, which might as well have been a high security prison because they had the high electrified fences and a lot of rough folks there. And then I got transferred to what's called a prison camp, which is a minimum security prison. And there it's all people who have less than 10 years to serve and are there for nonviolent crimes. But you know you're in prison, that's for sure. So I really learned how to get along with other people. But when I was in prison, I interviewed, or not just necessarily really interviewed, just talked to dozens and dozens of guys about why they were there and what decisions did they make or did not make that led to their incarceration. So I started accumulating all these little notes and all the things in the back of my mind. Says, what is it? How can I be able to help others stay out of prison? What am I learning from these different people about the mistakes that they made and about the mistakes that I made? And that kind of brought my career after prison forward to be able to help others stay out of prison.
Mm. So what made you decide to talk about your criminal conviction, and what do you expect people can learn from you?
Well, hopefully what people will learn from me is that they can stay out of prison by what I have to offer them. Originally, when I got out, I was planning on writing a book about my prison journey, and that didn't work out that well. I wasn't motivated to write a book for a lot of different reasons. But I got introduced to the National Speakers Association from a guy that I had met who's currently a member there. I thought, wow, I could probably reach a lot more people from a one-on-one standpoint about speaking what I went through. So I decided to join the National Speakers Association, go through their Pro Path plan, and actually get on stage and be able to talk about what happened to me and be able to help others from unethical slips. So basically what I tell people is that most white collar folks do not realize that small unethical slips can have devastating consequences, including criminal liability. So using my story and the story of others, I go through and talk about an acronym, which is ethics, in order to be able to help other people identify those personal characteristics and circumstances that are leading to unethical behavior.
Right.
And ethics stands for E is exaggerated ego. And you can think about someone like Harvey Weinstein, for example, and we all know people that think that they can do no wrong, they are above the law. There's all sorts of things that can go into that exaggerated ego. T is for temptation, but really temptation is opportunity when you think about it. If you have an opportunity that's presented to you, you have a temptation to be able to do something that you wouldn't normally do. H is hijacked by outside pressures, and these can be workplace pressures. So we have, people who are under severe pressures at work in order to perform. They may be on the cusp of losing their job. They have a bad boss, that type of thing. Or they could have outside pressures such as a drug addiction. They could be under severe financial pressures. They could be going through a divorce. There's a lot of things that could be happening in someone's life that can cause them to make a wrong decision, unethical type decision. I is integrity failures, and this is primarily with management. And with Pivot, I've actually pivoted to ethical leadership more so because I'm really into how the ethical bar has to be set high enough within an organization. When you take a look at a Volkswagen or a Wells Fargo, those well-known ethical company failures were the result of upper management not creating a high enough ethical bar and giving their blessings, so to speak, for unethical behavior. And this is really important. C is consequences not considered. This is where people do not see ahead on what can actually happen to them. and S is stinking thinking or slippery thinking, where everybody in my business is doing this. It's everybody's doing this. If I just do this one small thing, no one's going to find out, nobody's going to know. So collectively, people will tend to fall into, one or more of those 6 items, and just being aware that if you are seeing any of these things happening to you, you have a high propensity to be slipping into unethical behavior.
All right. So because everybody's doing it is no excuse.
That's exactly right.
And I want to clear up, you did not meet our NSA member in prison, correct? You met them outside of prison.
I met him outside of prison, yes, not
Right.
inside prison, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, fortunately, yes.
Yeah. So you talk about your prison experience as having been preventable. How could you have prevented that from happening? Certainly, I don't think you could have done it on your own, could you?
Well, I probably wouldn't have been able to stop the fraud on my own, but there were a lot of red flags along the way, primarily from things that management was telling me. One of the things that the prosecutor and the judge even said, I should have known there was a fraud going on, and he's right. I should have known. Um, for example, the guy who owned the company said to me when the company was failing, when all this goes down, I'm not going to be the only one that's going to prison. Well, who did I think he was talking about? How stupid for me not to take that as a massive red flag. And he used to play this little game, and he used to call me, and he goes, Kevin, today we're going to dance on the line between the light and the dark. And I said, Tony, we have to stay in the light side. He says, well, then we'll just stay in the gray side then. And I should have known that he was dancing that line quite frequently to the dark side. And he was, and he had done things that I found out afterwards that I did not know about. But I actually had an opportunity to walk away from the company 6 months before the company failed. And I was talked into rejoining the company. I had actually resigned, and I had actually rejoined the company. If I had just quit back then, I would never have been in the position that I was in with the law. But I didn't. I thought I could fix things. And that was a problem with my own ego. I thought that I could fix things, and I couldn't fix things. And that was a problem with my ego, unfortunately.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Now you selected to come back to the town that you were living in before you went to prison, and I'm curious to know, did it make any differences in the relationships that you had? Did you lose friends?
I did lose friends, naturally after being gone for more than 3 years, some people just slip by the wayside. But I was actually amazed about how many people, they knew me before, they knew I was a good person, they knew me and we were friends and we're always going to be friends. And so those relationships I was able to walk right back into again. But yeah, I mean, it's really tough talking about a prison experience when you've been out and people look at you the wrong way. It's just a really difficult situation.
Mm.
But I was very fortunate to have a wife that was completely supportive of me and a family that was very supportive. So I was able to make that transition pretty easily.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Tell our viewers, what do you wish you had known when you were a younger executive?
I wish I had known enough to take enough control of the decisions that were going on under my watch to be able to stand up against an unethical leader or unethical person in the organization. I wish that I had that willpower to say, no, stop, and actually walk away from a bad situation.
Mm.
That's what I really wish I had known. But quite frankly, I was being paid a lot of money in that position more money than I'd ever made in my entire life. And as I learned, money is not everything. You still have to be able to, look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did everything the way that I should have done it today. And I had enough guts to stand up to an unethical situation and walk away from it if I had to walk away from it. So I
Right.
really wish that I had known that as a younger person
Mhm.
and be able to supervise other people that work for me so that they didn't make unethical decisions as well, and really be able to stand up all the way up and down the line.
Right. Now, the area that I work in is people's behaviors, and typically people that work in finance are not known for their gregarious behaviors and glad handing people. How difficult was it for you to make a transition into public speaking?
Well, I'm an introvert at heart, so it was difficult in that respect as far as meeting new people and marketing. But believe it or not, I've never had a problem with getting on a stage or talking in front of a large number of people. I had done that before, so I don't get stage fright like a lot of people do, and I certainly don't fear speaking more than death is what people would actually fear speaking more than they do death, but not in my case. So yeah, I just didn't really have that type of fear. So I feel actually very comfortable, and actually I feel more energized when I'm talking to a large group of people as opposed to just speaking one-on-one like you and I are doing right now.
Right,
I
right.
draw a lot of energy off the crowd, and I enjoy the crowd. I like looking at people's faces when I talk. So I get a lot of energy out of that. I really enjoy that.
Well, that's good. So I'm sure that we can look forward to more programs on your ethics acronym and bring the message that you're bringing to other executives.
Right. So as part of the pandemic, actually a year ago, I started pivoting to virtual, where I was offering weekly ethics videos called Everyday Ethics. These are like 2 to 3 minute videos on an ethics topic of the week that a company can subscribe to the series, and then they can put it out to their employees to be able to keep ethics on the top of their mind. And then I also have an online ethics course too, that's a values-based ethics course. I found that most companies' ethics courses are rules-based. You shall do this, you shall not do that. And this is all values-based, which is all more of the morality-based ethics program that dealing with, your own personal integrity and honesty as opposed to rules-based ethics. And then I also have an 8-week leadership, ethical leadership mentoring program that I conduct over Zoom for companies where they can put 8 to 12 of emerging or next generational leaders into a mentoring program, and I'll work with them on a one-on-one or a group basis for an 8-week period of time. So I'm doing some different things now as a result of the pandemic. And I think that the whole pandemic is really going to change the way that we as speakers deliver our message. Whereas we got up on the stage, and I think that will end up coming back, but I think we'll see more and more on these one-on-one or these virtual deliveries. Because essentially with an internet connection and email and Zoom or StreamYard, any type of the streaming services, we can deliver their message to thousands of people without the cost of bringing their whole teams together to one central location. We can just go ahead and do it, do it online. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as we go on,
Right,
or see some sort of hybrid of the two.
right, exactly. And I would imagine that training is really good for a new manager too.
It absolutely is. Companies are responsible for creating an ethical culture at all levels of their organization. And they'll spend millions of dollars working on creating their ethical culture. But as new managers come up, those new managers have to be instilled with that highly ethical culture. So the whole point is that all new managers should go through ethical leadership training themselves. And as they bring up people behind them, they need to be able to bring up their people as well. So ethical ethical leadership training is very, very important for all new managers. And quite frankly, there's a lot of upper level managers that need to have refresher courses on ethical leadership as well. You know, a lot of the problems that we're seeing today that you're reading in the Wall Street Journal are really problems created by upper level managers as well. So this goes at all levels. But I think the key thing right now for the DOJ and the SEC is creating an ethical culture, and companies need to be able to prove that they are doing so. So the training that we do is for at all levels of an organization, be able to really instill that ethical culture within the organization.
All right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so what's the best way for viewers to get a hold of you or get in touch with you, Kevin?
Okay, my website is businessethics.advisors.com. So that's businessethics.advisors.com. And that's going to be the best way for them to take a look at my videos, the website. The different programs that we offer are all important, are going to be all on that website. And then also my Vimeo channel is going to be vimeo.com/jkevinfoster. And then you could also look me up on LinkedIn and just search for J. Kevin Foster and pop up there. And those are all ways you can get a hold of me.
Right.
And really look forward to talking to anybody who wants to instill an ethical culture within the organization.
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing your story with our viewers.
Well, thank you very much, Diane. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with Kevin Foster, ethical leadership expert, helping professionals develop practical, ethical reasoning skills. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.